You're listening to Serial Killers, Mass Murderers, and Other Macabre Stories with Michael Cashy and Stacy Sturm.
Hello, and welcome to Serial Killers, Mass Murderers, and Other Macabre Stories. I'm Stacy Sturm.
Michael Cashy.
So our first one, not a flop. The first one went okay.
We went from 3 fans to 5. Didn't quite double it, but we're getting there.
No, it was super close though. Actually, we got a lot of feedback on it. I'm happy about that. I'm good. So our Facebook page went from 2 people, you and I, to now like 1,000 people.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No.
Yes.
I don't believe you.
Sorry. Yeah, it was like we're close to we're like 900 in a week. So, bravo. People love murder. Just as we suspected, people love murder.
Oh, crap. 8:59.
Yeah. So we're almost 900 people. So yeah, so keep sharing it.
Last I saw, it was at
Tag your friends.
120.
No, yeah.
Hey, all
Boom.
right.
Boom. So yeah, so this just confirms. This just in, people love murder. That's why we're doing it.
No.
I love murder.
Well, I think
there's got to be like some psychological study that somebody did that says why people love murder cases so much.
I don't know.
Because it's not a happy topic. It's not something you typically, but it's like we're drawn to it for some reason.
Well, too, with us, it's a little different. All of the podcasts that I listen to, and they're great podcasts, they do for the most part, they really focus on the ones everyone knows about. They might throw in some stuff that, like even with those cases, some things that people like that typically aren't well known.
Yeah.
But they'll tend to focus on like your Jeffrey Dahmers, your Ted Bundys, your John Wayne Gacy's.
Yeah.
And then we are doing something a little bit different where our focus is going to be one regional. So we did the Wolf family murders last week. We're doing a different family murders, another North Dakota family murders this week.
And next week we'll probably have another North Dakota family murder because I've already started
there
gathering
seems to
intel
be a
on that.
pattern here, and I'm working on...
A lot of North Dakota farmers kill their families.
A lot of families die in North Dakota.
Like hired
died,
hands.
I should say died.
Yeah. So, North Dakota nice.
Yeah. Oh, hey, Bob. How are you doing? Oh, not too bad, Tom. What you got there? Is that a shotgun? Sure is, Bab.
Yeah, a lot of hired hands and people that kill each other in North Dakota back in the good old days. When I was doing research on this next case, what we're going to be talking about is the Kreider family murders. When I was doing a lot of research, one of the things that popped up is how many hired hands killed the entire families they worked for. And it wasn't just in North Dakota. It seems to be like a thing back from like the 1850s until early 1920s. A lot of hired hands just killed the families they worked for. And we don't know why. I'm thinking it's because they were shifty to begin with. I don't think it was like...
The families are the hired hands because it could be...
The hired hands.
Could have been super shitty families too.
I feel like that
basically
was work a lot of people
slave labor.
Ran around the country.
Yeah, they were
just
kind of drifters.
Yeah, drifters doing farm work. So, yeah.
Not to be confused with grifters.
Because grifting is actually very fun and interesting. If you've ever seen The Community on grifting, it's grifting 101 right there. That's pretty good. But yeah, so the one we're doing today is, and by the way, too, if you want to go on our Facebook page and suggest some interesting things that you know about, some interesting stories that is like we said last week, as long as there's some kind of police documents or news stories or court documents or something that we can use to like reference.
There has to be an actual paper trail. Your friend's Solomon's blog isn't going to cut it if that is the only thing.
Because we actually we had one gal message us last week, and she said she was a survivor of a serial killer. Like somebody tried to kill her, and they were a serial killer. And I said, well, do you have like some stories or some police documents? Like we just need something to make sure we're not just going all on hearsay.
Yeah,
we need to make sure that we have some proof to back it up.
Not saying that these things didn't happen, just saying we need to have things to cite. Actual evidence, yeah.
We need to have some things to cite and to work off of. So, all right. So the delightful story I've pulled for us today is the Kreider family murders. Now, do you know much about them?
I don't. I think I read about them a few years ago, and it just never... haven't revisited it.
There's not a lot about this one because it's late 1800s. A lot of the court documents have been lost or set on fire or gone or whatever. A lot of that stuff, it's just some news reports here and there. And they didn't know a lot about the murders back then. You didn't have all this DNA stuff and all this stuff to tie things together. The evidence is pretty basic. We think the hired hand did it. We tried him and he's guilty. This is going to be one of those things where I don't have a very in-depth report on this, but I have as in-depth as I can get, if that makes sense. You keep looking at me weird.
I keep hearing your...
Oh, my charm bracelet?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I'll make sure I silence that. Okay. Early on the morning of July 2nd, 1893, a tragic event occurred outside the tiny farm community of Candu, North Dakota.
Ooh.
For people that are... And here's the nice thing. These are regional stories to North Dakota, but they're still interesting. I don't not watch a murder drama because it's not from my state. You know what I mean? If I see an interesting murder drama or crime drama on somewhere in rural Ohio, I'm still going to watch it. So even though these are regional stories, I feel like they have enough mass appeal.
Well, there's a reason why we're doing them. They just get pushed under the radar, probably because of where they're coming from.
Yeah, because for people that don't know, Candu, North Dakota is like a population 1,000.
Is it that big?
I don't know. You look up the population because I can't deviate from here, so you're going to have to be Google guy now if we have any questions on stuff. I feel like Candu has about 1,000 people maybe that live there at the height of its glory. Back in 1893, there was maybe 200.
1,083, so just barely.
Nailed it. Yeah, so Candu, North Dakota, very small town. And in 1893, it would have been even smaller. This happened outside a tiny farm community called Candu. Daniel Kreider, his wife, and 4 of their 8 children were brutally murdered. Their eldest daughter, Annie, and the 3 youngest children survived the ordeal, but were never quite the same. The horrendous event shocked an entire nation. This was still big news even back then, to have the parents and 4 of their 8 children murdered.
Well, probably because they were survivors. Usually they all die.
True. First, a little bit about the Kreider family. Daniel Schenk Kreider and Barbara Risser Kreider were both originally from central Pennsylvania. And Daniel was from a large, prominent family in the Annville area. You're probably more familiar with Pennsylvania than I am since you were born there.
There's so many tiny towns.
So they were from Annville area. Barbara also came from a prominent Mennonite family in Lancaster County. I want to joke about the Mennonites on Letterkenny.
Oh, yeah.
He says, God, can they run?
Yeah, can they run?
Yeah. But I'm like, maybe not a funny joke for this murder story, but I feel like Letterkenny's always a funny joke. But anyway, she came from a Mennonite family outside of Lancaster. Her parents were both Rissers and were second cousins once removed. Now, how Daniel Kreider and Barbara met is not quite known.
Family reunion.
Probably. I feel like they say that because there's some ties there. But Daniel Kreider was not Mennonite.
Oh, okay.
So she was, but he was not.
Oh, her parents
were second cousins.
Okay, gotcha.
Once removed. So how Daniel Kreider and Barbara met is not quite known. They had their first child almost immediately after marrying, because that's what you did in 1893. A 1900 biography of Daniel Brightbill wrote, Dan Kreider and his nephew went to Dakota in 1886. I guess I forget. It wasn't like North Dakota back then. It was just Dakotas, I think. When did North Dakota become a state?
1883?
Well, this would have been, this would have been 1886. So this would have been shortly after then. A 1900 biography of David Brightbill says Dan Kreider and his nephew went to Dakota in 1886 with some stock for speculation. And they took a fancy to the country and decided to remain there, and accordingly entered claim to land in sections 19 and 20.
Sorry, 1889.
Okay, see, so it was not. Okay. It was not a state yet. In Township 158 in Towner County. They set up residence there, so him and his nephew came to Dakota first, set up residence there and rented land and cropped out about 320 acres. That's a lot. 320 acres is a lot of land.
Holy crap. How'd you...
Well, because he went there with some money that he had in interests and went there and was able... This is Dakota at the time, so they were probably giving away land for like a quarter.
Yeah, just giving away, you claim it, it's yours.
Yeah, probably. Several of Bright Bill's brothers and sisters eventually came to Candu as well. So once the family's like, dude, did you see? He got all this land for like a quarter. Let's all move. But in April of 1888... you might, some people, I don't know if you're going to hear this, but you might hear a toilet in the background because they're currently doing construction on the radio station right now. And I just heard the toilet flush, so you might have as well. But in April of 1888, Daniel paid $14 for another 160-acre farmstead, a little bit closer to Candu. $14 for 160 acres, a little bit closer to town, which means that was probably some good farmland if it was close to town.
See how much that is today.
Oh, I don't even know.
$14. Oh my God.
Okay.
$3,000.
There's no way you could get 160 acres for $3,000 today.
That shows you how garbage our
Inflation
money is today.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a whole other topic to talk about. So he built another house on this land and moved the family to that house. Now, this is where Daniel and Barbara and their children were living at the time of their death. So they were living at the new farmstead at the time of their death. He still owned the original 2 lots when the estate was settled, and his family moved onto that land after he died. The Kreiders seemed to be well liked in the area. They were considered good neighbors, upstanding members of the community. They were also good employers. So they had all this land, so they had quite a few hired hands. They had many farm hands, hired hands, and people that helped them out around their farmstead. So now we get to the fateful day. Barbara Kreider got up to make breakfast on the morning of July 7th, 1893. Her husband, Daniel, and their 8 children were still in bed on their farm near Candu. Their hired farmhand, Albert Baumberger, was also awake in the house. Barbara heard the first gunshot that killed her husband in the downstairs bedroom. She was confused and had no idea what was going on. She was probably like, somebody misfired, or maybe the hired hand was up and cleaning a gun. Like, I don't think the first thing you go to is murder.
I don't know. Like, it's the 1800s. I hear a gunshot. It's murder somehow.
Guns were so common back then. I don't think it really alerted anything unusual. If I were to hear a gunshot in the room next to me now, I'd be like, whoa, out of place. Something's not right. But back then...
Hey, it wasn't as common as you would think.
I would think
the Wild West wasn't as crazy as you would imagine.
Maybe.
Certain towns were. Bismarck, looking at you.
I was going to say, we had murders every day here in Bismarck. But little did she know that she was going to be next. Their farmhand Baumberger confronted her in the kitchen. She was able to let out a shout before he shot her. He then locked up Annie, Aaron, Eve, and Henry in his bedroom. So he lived in that farmhouse at the time. Okay. So he kills the husband, he kills the wife, and he locks up Annie, Aaron, Eve, and Henry in his bedroom. Why them? I don't know. I'm assuming it's because they got up and were like, what's going on?
Usually you would
just hurry up and go in
them.
and shoot them. So I don't know exactly what happened, but for some reason they got locked up in his bedroom. Those kids locked up, he tracked down Murphy, Mary, and David and killed them with a single load of buckshot. 13-year-old Bernice attempted to escape by jumping out a second-floor window and running for help. Baumberger caught her. She cried and begged to be allowed to see her family again, be brought in with the family, and he obliged. He took her inside, showed her each of the dead bodies. Mary actually turned out to still be alive. So when they went back in and he saw Mary was still alive, he slit her throat right in front of Bernice. And then he shot Bernice dead at close range while she cowered in the corner with her hands over her face. While Baumberger was thus occupied, so while he's murdering these other children, Aaron, Eva, and Henry escaped his room and hid elsewhere in the farm. The murderer was not interested in them anyway. He actually turned his attentions to Annie, who had not escaped. Why? I don't know. I don't know why Annie didn't escape. Annie begged him to spare her life and the lives of her remaining brothers and sisters. He agreed and supposedly raped Annie and then forced her to make him breakfast right next to her mother's corpse.
Good God.
Yeah. Now, all of this that I'm talking about was in news reports, not necessarily police reports, because I was not able to find any police reports on this.
Oh.
So this is all according to newspapers.
We should probably talk about newspapers back then.
Yeah, which is why...
There was no journalistic integrity whatsoever.
Which is why I'm
there
kind of
was
bringing
no...
this up. Well, they didn't really follow any proper channels.
Yeah.
We'll just put it that way, which can be good, it can be bad. Because right now, sometimes you don't get police reports, or you can't find, or they're redacted, or whatever. And back then, they went for it.
As long as something was said,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter who it was, they didn't follow up.
Yeah.
They didn't corroborate stories. They posted whatever, or they printed
Right.
literally everything.
Yeah. So I don't know.
It was the equivalent of sharing a meme as your news source.
It's true. Right now, we have mom, dad dead, and we have 4 of the children are dead. 3 of them escaped. Annie's still in the house, and she's been raped and forced to cook this guy breakfast right next to her mom's corpse. According to police reports, police reports were actually gathered by the Lebanon Daily News. Now, the Lebanon Daily News is out of Pennsylvania, their home area.
Was there a Lebanon, North Dakota?
I don't think so. If there was, this isn't it, because I saw this is from Lebanon, Pennsylvania. But a Pennsylvania newspaper covering the story said Bomberg took his time eating. He even asked for seconds. So basically had her cook more. He then had Annie gather up any money that she could find and some of their valuables. He then tied her hands and feet in the barn and rode away on one of their horses. So they actually got the police reports, and in the police reports we know for sure, it doesn't say if Annie had been raped or what had happened before that, but in the police reports it says for sure that he did have Annie in his possession, and he forced her to cook him breakfast. He even ate seconds, had her gather valuables from around the house, and then he took off on one of the horses. This was also in the police reports. Annie's younger brother Aaron, age 5, managed to untie her, and then she rode off, leaving him and her almost 4-year-old sister and 2-year-old brother alone in the house with the bodies. She has her brother, who was, I think, what did they say, like 5 or 6 at the time? He was not very old, with a 4- and 2-year-old child now alone in the house with the bodies.
On a good day, that's a disaster. On the day your family's killed.
Yeah, the day your family's murdered. Yeah. The first place Annie Kreider went was the nearby home of Samuel Brightbill in Candu. Samuel was one of the nephews of Daniel Kreider, who went along years earlier to settle in North Dakota, if you might remember talking about that. Brightbill told a Grand Forks newspaper, now this is his quote, "She rode into the yard, half-dressed, disheveled, and definitely panicked. The horse barely came to a stop before she jumped off screaming, 'They're dead, they're dead, help me, help me.' It was alarming to us, and we weren't even there to see the gore that she had witnessed. I can't even imagine." End quote. So that was his quote.
Okay.
She then went into town to alert the local sheriff. A posse was immediately formed.
How old was she again?
13?
Okay, so she was old enough to
She was old enough,
understand what was
going on. She definitely knew what was going on. A posse was immediately formed, which went first to the farm and then picked up the trail of Bomberger. Now, apparently and allegedly, according to the Lebanon Daily News, the motive for the murders was a disagreement between Bomberger and Mrs. Kreider. She allegedly had had some issues with his quality of work and had expressed them to him. But others in the area, of course, this is just hearsay and gossip, said that they think it was because he had unreturned feelings for Mrs. Kreider, and he was angry that she had previously refused his advances.
I can see that.
But now, this is a whole other story of motive, according to the website Executed on This Day. Yes, that's a website, Executed on This Day. They say it was actually Annie that he was angry at for refusing his advances. And so then after midnight on July 6th, 1893, he snuck into her bedroom, which was next to his own. Annie had kicked him out and had threatened to tell her parents if he didn't quit bothering her. Baumberger slunk back to his bed, furious and humiliated, and plotted revenge. We have 3 different motives. Either it was Annie that was an unrequited love, Mrs. Baumberger, who was an unrequited love, or Mrs. Kreider, who was an unrequited love, or Mrs. Kreider, who was unhappy with his work and had accosted him about it the day before.
So now the work issues, that's coming from him?
That was in a police report as one of the reasons.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because him going after the daughter, it doesn't seem very feasible that he would spare her then. He would attack the family.
He would have killed her too then, if it was an unrequited love with Annie.
Executed
but
on this day.
It might explain why he raped her.
Allegedly
raped her, sorry. That might explain why he had allegedly raped her.
I would probably killed her then too.
And they said that he loved her. Like, he loved Annie. He wasn't just a sexual thing. Like, he loved her, and she didn't want to have... So that might be also why he raped her, but spared her, allegedly.
The wife was the first one shot?
The husband.
Husband was the first one shot.
Wife was the second one shot. So, I don't know. This is just all...
Yeah, I would probably say that it was... He wanted the Mrs. Kreider.
You think so?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It doesn't make sense to kill the family and then...
You think if it was personal with Mrs. Kreider, though, he would have killed her first? Like, making sure he got her.
You take the...
The husband out of the equation?
Yeah, take the biggest threat first.
I don't know.
Because then you just lock the other ones in the...
Yeah, I don't know why he locked the other children in the bedroom.
Probably because he probably had a double barrel.
Yeah.
So there was 3 kids, 4 kids.
There was 8 kids.
8 kids.
4 of them were alive.
Yeah.
He killed 4 and left 4.
No. Because, I mean, it's going to take you a second. Chances are they're not going to be able to overpower you or anything, but...
Well, especially since a lot of the kids, Annie was one of the oldest, and she's only 13. So, I don't know. I just can't even imagine what being in that house that day. Or no, Bernice was 13. She ran. I don't remember how old Annie was, because remember, Bernice jumped out the window and tried to run.
Oh.
And he caught her and brought her back and showed her all the bodies and then shot her.
Yeah, okay.
Like, yeah, I can't even imagine being in the house that day. How terrifying that was, especially if you're Annie. Oh my God. Having to cook breakfast beside your dead mom? Seconds even. I'd be like, dude, was that not enough eggs? I'd be thinking in my head, I should have maybe prepared more eggs the first time around, because I don't want to be doing this the second time around.
Like, where's the borax?
Right.
Put the borax in the
how did she
eggs.
not poison him? She was probably like not thinking at all.
And he was probably watching.
Yeah, probably. Well, Baumberger was arrested with no resistance in Canada and brought back to jail in Grand Forks, North Dakota. For this, he was fortunate, since the general populace was eager to string him up immediately. Vigilante or lynch mob justice was very popular back then. In fact, the story that I think we're probably going to talk about next week, unless you come up with something, which you probably won't, in a week.
Boy.
Well, you only have a week.
Yeah.
And you had a week, and you came up with nothing. So I'm thinking you're going to procrastinate as long as you possibly can. But the story we're talking about next week does end in vigilante lynch mob justice. So
that didn't happen.
Right? It was only the wily efforts of the local sheriffs that brought him back alive. He was arraigned on November 21st, 1893, and sentenced on the 23rd to be hung. On January 19th, 1894, the sentence was carried out. This was the first legal hanging for the very young state of North Dakota. Now, remember, when did you say we became a state?
1889.
1889. So this is 1894 when they finally... Yeah, so we'd only been a state for a very short amount of time. So this was our first legal hanging. I like how they say legal hanging. The execution was carried out on the Kreider homestead. So back then, they used to hang you like where you... Because the story next week, we'll talk about that as well. So if you murdered somebody at 305 East Broadway in Bismarck, you would be hung at 305 East Broadway in Bismarck.
Well, there's no
at the
trial.
crime scene. No
trial.
So with Baumberger facing the scene of the crime, at 1:40 p.m., the track was sprung and he died within minutes. Now, the Kreider children returned to the family in Pennsylvania. The guardianship was given to their uncle Tobias and Aunt Annie. So, older Aunt Annie.
Obviously.
Yes. Who was Daniel's younger sister. On the day of the funeral, Daniel's brother, Aaron Kreider, and a brother of Barbara Risser, also left for Candu to settle the affairs of the family. Aaron took care of selling the land and the home. So that all money went. And then the money went to Tobias, who was the legal guardian of the children, with intent of the money going to the children as they got older. Although Tobias was listed as a legal guardian, not all of the children actually remained with him. According to Eva Connors, Annie Kreider's daughter, Annie was the surviving girl that ran for help. So according to Eva Connors, Annie Kreider's daughter, her mother lived with Aaron Kreider for a while, and then with Lydia Kreider Kettering, who was Daniel's sister, and Henry stayed with Tobias and Annie until he was about 18. Eva and Aaron remained with them for a few years, but by the 1900 census, they were also living with other members of the family. So they were just kind of shuffled along for the rest of their lives, except for Henry, who was in the same place until he was 18. All the other kids just kind of got shuffled around.
Henry was the youngest?
Henry was
Okay.
Henry was was he the youngest? Or Aaron?
Because that makes sense. I mean,
who untied Annie? Who helped untie Annie?
I think, didn't Henry pick himself out?
Annie's younger brother, Aaron, age 5, managed to untie her.
Oh, okay.
So Henry, at the time, was only 2.
Okay, so still too young to,
Yeah,
remember anything.
right. So, yeah. So there you go. That is the story of the Kreider family murders in Candu, North Dakota. That's all I got.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I wish there was more on it. I mean, that's definitely enough detail. It's definitely more detail than I thought.
There probably was, but a lot of it probably burned in the Capitol fire, because I imagine all the records would have went there.
Yeah, a lot of the police records and stuff for the state. A lot, especially if that's going to be the state's first hanging.
Yeah.
I got to think that, and when the Capitol burned down in 1934, a lot of those records were lost. So,
because I think with the Wolf family, that was one of the things I had read, was that a lot of those records were stored at the Capitol.
Yeah.
And then, well, they're gone.
Yeah, they're
so
gone now.
there was some more extra detail with that one, but
yeah. But there you go. So that is the story of the Kreider family murders outside of Candu. Next week, we'll probably do... Who did I say? The Haven? Let me go back here to the Haven. Yeah, the Haven family murders. So another family murdered. But this one is really interesting. This one has a lot of intrigue and what happened, because they weren't just found murdered. They disappeared off the face of the earth for several months. So that's going to be an interesting story we're going to talk about. Yeah. And like we said last week, if you guys have any stories or any interesting things that, no one's really looked into or nobody's covered, definitely let us know, because we like to talk about these things, expose you to other new crime dramas. But like we said, if there's a story you think we should cover, definitely you can let us know. You can message us on our Facebook page, or you can also email me, Stacy at urlradio.net, STACY@urlradio.net. Anything you want to add?
I've got nothing.
You got nothing today?
Yeah, nope. I kind of feel like the records on this case. I'm blank.
Okay, thanks. All right, everybody, have a good day.
Thanks for listening to our killer podcast, Serial Killers, Mass Murderers, and Other Macabre Stories, with Michael Cashy and Stacy Sturm. Let us know if there's a story you think we should talk about. You can find our page on Facebook or email us at stacy@urlradio.net. Stay safe.